This player managed to do more damage than the entire team combined twice in a tank that's not even that good, and of course we're going to see exactly how he managed to do it. The first replay is on Ghost Town. He's taking the typical heavy position that you can see right here. It's often a position that if you can get into early, if you know that the enemy team aren't going to be moving up to the position or the gravel pile just in front here, then you can definitely deal a ton of damage to them, and you can get this position and make it a real problem for the enemy team to really do a whole lot without having to push into you and take a ton of damage in the process. And that's exactly what you're seeing here up against the AE Phase 1 as he's moving forward. Now obviously when you're in this sort of position you want to be taking advantage of every time that the enemy team fire, and the AE Phase 1's been firing at both him and his teammate and not managing to pen a single round, and every single time he does miss he gets punished very hard with the standard rounds of the M103. So it's nice to see that this tank isn't just being used as a premium spam. But either way, the VZ44 trying to side scrape, but unfortunately for him is that it doesn't really matter when the IS-6 is going balls deep, and with the IS-6 going balls deep he's managing to get around him, and that gives the M103 time to actually push the Lanson. Now when you do push from this position you have to be careful that the campers on the hill don't get a shot into you, especially if you go over just a little bit too much, and you can end up getting taken out. But luckily, the Lanson C doesn't manage to fully take advantage of the fact that he is YOLOing, and with the VZ44 still looking in the complete wrong direction, he's able to focus down this Lanson, which is the biggest threat at this moment in time. But the VZ44 still not realising until the very last minute when the M103 is basically now fully reloaded, and he gets another shot into him, low rolls to like a ton, but his teammate finished him off either way, and that's 4,200 damage done in a very quick fashion up against some tier 8 and tier 9 vehicles in the AE Phase 1, the VZ44 and the Lanson C. But by no means is this game over, and with the Scorpion G out in the open you can push into the centre and manage to find opponents that are in the central location on the left hand side of the map, as well as push into people that might have taken the position such as the CS44, which is a perfect play. And in a game where you are top tier and one of 3 tier 9s, then you really don't have a whole lot to worry about, and the M103's gun handling and performance of the gun, including the damage per minute, is superb, which means that you can get up close and personal, you can shoot from long ranges, and you really have a pretty flexible tank. You just don't necessarily have the best armor for a tier 9 heavy, but that doesn't matter when you're capable of a player and when you're getting into this sort of position. When pushing down to this position you have to be very careful of where these tank destroyers are in their base, but because the friendly team have actually pushed up there, they're able to spot them and you're able to farm them in the side, which is perfect. But you still have to be very careful, since you're seeing that the T-34-100 has a shot, the Karo 88 has a shot as well, and it is a little bit of a risky scenario because you have all of this area in front of you, as well as the fact that they could potentially hit you in the side. So pushing down here early game without finishing off some of the teammates or enemy team on the left hand side, not particularly the best idea, but from here you can get a wide line of sight, and especially considering that his team were pushing the hill area, it was an easy way to get free shots. Maybe you would have wanted to go here to get shots for free, but you also wouldn't have got any shots on the people on the left hand side of the map either. So what do you do in this position when the enemy team have kind of won the northern side of the map? They've been camping up on the hill. You definitely don't push them in an M103 because you don't have the best view range, and they're certainly going to outspot you in the bushes. So you take out the tanks that are on the left hand side. Once they're dealt with, you can deal with them, finish them off, and then move towards the final few tanks. And with the team support that you should have at that point, having removed the left hand flank, you're going to be able to overwhelm them. Your team are going to help you spot them, and you should be able to win the game. But with 6,900 damage done in this game, you'd be very, very happy as it is currently. So any more extra damage is just a bonus. Now the Super Hellcat on the enemy team, not having the reliable pen and accuracy to be able to pinpoint the turret weak point of the M103, which is of course the big cupola and the top of the turret, can be penned by some tanks if it overmatches, but I think you need a 183mm gun, but of course you can correct me in the comment section. Essentially all of the big boys are going to be able to pen you through the top of the turret, overmatching you, and of course anyone else is going to be able to pen that big cupola at the same time. And of course it has the boat-shaped hull of all of the American tanks, which is basically where you shoot in the left and right lower glacis, able to pen very reliably. And so yeah, the overall armor of the tank is basically an avoidance for auto-aimers in the game and people who do not know the weak points, which, you know, at this point, after World of Tanks being released for so long, isn't that many. And yeah, you're definitely going to find it a little bit of a nuisance when it comes to trying to deal consistent amounts of damage, and why you have to be a player that is consistent within the game to pull off results like you're seeing here. Now they're up by 1200 hit points, but those hit points can certainly disappear very quickly when you're pushing into tanks that are in bushes, and if they use the bush mechanics correctly with tanks like an SU-101, it's not going to be very nice for you. But luckily the enemy tanks managing to bounce off the M103 at this range up against tier 7 and 8s that don't have the best accuracy. You can bounce a few rounds, but you shouldn't rely upon the armor of the M103 since premium rounds are its worst nightmare. But either way, just now waiting for the enemy teams to make the mistakes whilst also keeping an eye on where the Bourrasque is, because you never want to be jumped up on from behind, and especially when you have only 800 hit points left. Now if you notice on the map, the CC-1 Mark II is actually pushing towards the hill, which is hopefully going to spot the SU-101 and also cause the IS-2 to panic and push out in front of the M103 so he can finish him off and come away with one more of the enemy team's tanks taken out. But luckily the SU-101 does actually get spotted by the CC as we were expecting. He then pushes over to the hill trying to get into cover, but unfortunately for him gets removed, and then the CC shuts down the IS-2M, which is perfect and exactly what you want, and it was a perfect play by the M103 in this situation. Well, the Bourrasque, you are never going to be able to outspot the Bourrasque, so what do? Well, of course you can pressure him into coming back to reset the cap circle, and if you do this you're going to be able to at least get him into a position that is not optimal for him. He's not going to be able to spot from the area over here since you've got a few ridge lines to get in the way, and also if he comes from the left he's going to get spotted before he reaches the hill area, so he's not going to be able to get reliable shots into you. You just have to be very vigilant and ready for when he does finally get spotted, and he does manage to get spotted, luckily by the VZ44, and he's trying to escape to the friendly cap circle, and the M103 having a game where he's done 8.6 thousand damage isn't going to settle for having a cap for the win, so he goes after the Bourrasque. Now if you want to guarantee a win then maybe you would just cap, but at this point I am not surprised he is pushing for as much damage as possible in this game to pull out the unbelievable result, and of course I would most likely do the exact same thing. Now he does manage to get spotted, and that's most likely that the Bourrasque is here, getting vision through the centre of the map on Ghost Town. So instead of pushing over to the right hand side, which he may well have managed to get over here, but it was very unlikely that in the time period he would have been able to get here, and so the Bourrasque is indeed where we expected him to be. And now the M103 takes the little left turn to try and get and intercept the Bourrasque, but the Bourrasque is quite far away, and coming up against a CC it's unlikely he's going to be able to get there unless the CC manages to miss all of his shells. And miss all of his shells he does, and the VZ44 only manages to connect one as the Bourrasque is leaving, but luckily the M103 now positioning himself in a way such that the Bourrasque is going to have to cross him, and that means a free shot of damage is almost guaranteed, and exactly that. Now he pushes over to the left, exactly what you want. The Bourrasque is unloaded on the VZ44. He's probably got about 10 seconds left of his reload, so there's nothing he can do, and he shuts him down for 9,249 damage showing, and of course you can see the results on screen now. So surely getting 10k damage doesn't come around all too often in the M103, but 3 days later another player manages to not only deal the same amount of damage but actually even more and get more assistance, making this the best M103 gameplay I have ever seen. Now the matchup is very favourable. There are 3 tier 9s on each team, you have about 5 tier 8s, and of course the rest being tier 7s. And when the M103 comes up against tier 7s, they can reliably bounce, as we saw in the first game. But of course, enemy teams can actually pen you if they get lucky, and somehow, unfortunately, the BZ68 manages to pen on the move the M103, which is possible. I mean, the problem is that it would have been a very, very kind of lucky shot to be able to reliably do that. But unfortunately, Type 4 Heavy comes outside on easy damage, and at the beginning of this game, he's picked up 1600 damage, exactly what you want when you're playing this vehicle. And now loading the heat rounds as he's getting closer to, of course, trying to get 100%, I would expect, at this point in the game. He's able to load some gold and, of course, go for all of the vehicles in front of him, and pretty much every tank at tier 9 is pennable with the heat rounds of the M103, and you can see here the Type 4 managing to luckily bounce considering the 340 heat pen that this gets. But of course, the lower plate of the Type 4, or at least the flat lower plate, like frontal plate of the vehicle, very easy to pen with 340 heat pen. And that's the real problem of the Type 4, considering the M103 is a tank that, you know, isn't going to be able to bounce as many rounds, but is far more consistent with that gun, and it's still been able to pick up 3000 block damage, whereas the Type 4 just isn't going to be able to output the damage that this tank can do, and probably isn't bouncing that many more than this either. But Type 4 yet again out in the open, easy pens, and that tank has so many weak points that it doesn't really matter when you've got the pen that this has as to whether or not you can pen any area of the vehicle depending on how they're angling, etc. It's all pennable. Now unfortunately not able to really get any free shots within this game, but when you are playing in the M103, because of the damage per minute and because you've got that 400 alpha and of course the more flexibility with the use of the American gun depression, you're able to actually get into some positions that some of the other heavy tanks just wouldn't have a chance. And that's the trade-off between having that super good armor that something like a Type 4 has, or at least super good if you know what I mean. But yeah, that's why the M103 is quite competitive, at least in terms of being able to deal a lot of damage in games, because it does have that consistent gun and the gun handling to be able to put that damage out. But in this game we've been seeing some expert use of slowly creeping around a corner but only exposing a minimal amount of the tank, which is what you want to do. You never want to slow peek something where you're coming around a corner very slow, exposing the side of your tank, for example. But if you are coming around a corner up against a derp cannon that's not really realistically going to be able to hit you or hit a tiny weak point of your vehicle for a lot of damage, you're going to be able to outtrade them 90% of the time, and that's exactly what we've seen here. Now unfortunately for the batch at 25T, M103 pushes up, knows exactly that the enemy team are not in a good position. They're having to be pushed back by his team. There's a Lurver in support, a T29, stopping them from just pushing round the corner, and in doing so the batch at 25T gets shut down as the M103 takes the hill, and taking the hill on Corellia is one of the key points to victory, since you can get side shots on all of the people on the northern side of the map once you've won this side. Now unfortunately for the IS-2S, the tier 7 heavy tank, he is going to find it a big problem. But unfortunately, a Progetto 56 managed to find the side, or a 54, sorry, manages to find the side of the M103. But because he's now pushed down, you avoid getting hit from the back end, and that allows you to basically farm up whatever it is that's going to be pushing from the side. Happenstance being the IS-2S, which, yeah, I mean, it gets less alpha, it gets less armor, and it's probably a longer reload too. So yeah, it's not like it's going to be doing a whole lot. And unfortunately, Carnarvon's caught sleeping on the job, manages to get shut down too, and having picked up 8,182 damage, he's probably thinking, I'm getting flashbacks to 3 days ago, maybe I can push the 10k mark again, and I guess we'll have to see that. Maybe we'll even see the 10k mark pushed over, and of course get even higher, but I guess you have to wait to the end to find that out. We know that there must be some campers in the base, because there's 7,840 hit points worth of damage still on the enemy team, so plenty to farm, and there's also only 3 tanks that have been spotted so far, which means that you've got to push to the base to get the spotting damage, and hopefully the Scorpion on the hill is going to be able to support you, and you may even get some assistance damage on top of the damage that we're seeing here, which would be perfect and able for you to just get even more damage, even more XP, and come away with even more of a disgusting result. And when you're up against tanks like the 87, it's not really a problem. The only tank that is a problem is of course the fast firing Spatuk that has the heat rounds that are able to pen you every single time, and unfortunately that has to be the tank that you meet. But nonetheless, he's able to focus on the Progetto, and in order for the Spatuk to hit him, he's got to YOLO, which of course isn't going to be worth it for him with the Scorpion and the Lerva supporting him on the hill. And of course now just ploughing round straight through the Progetto, enabling him to get even more and more damage, and he's well over 11,000 combined damage, which is unbelievable just to say he's managed to get that in the M103. Let alone what he's about to achieve with the actual damage as we move forward. And with the Spatuk still up on near the pillbox, you don't know where he's going to be, and he is at least 2 shells to be able to remove him from the rest of the game. And having spotted that there is of course a T43, this is perfect, this is exactly what you want. Oh, and even more of a perfect result, he manages to set the T43 on fire, lands the second shell, and now he is well over 10,000 damage with 10,720. And will he be able to pick him up blind? Not quite, but doesn't matter. T43 does finally get spotted, he's taken out, but now it's a rush to see if he can get over 11,000 damage with this vehicle. Can he land the final shot on the Spatuk? And he does. Oh my word, pens him with a HE as well. A quick switch to intuition to finish off the game with 11,247 damage, nearly 14,000 damage combined with the assistance and the actual damage. I mean, yeah, the Tier 9 heavy that isn't necessarily that overpowered, and certainly no one's going to be calling this thing a 279E at Tier 9. It's a tank that is good, but probably nowhere near the ultimate competitive tank at Tier 9, so it was even more rewarding to watch a player manage to play it so well. And if you have enjoyed today's video, please do think about subscribing, and of course like the video to let me know that you enjoyed these sorts of replays and the commentary style that we're doing on these videos. And make sure that you go and check out these videos on some of the tips that you can use specifically in World of Tanks to try and get better at the game if you're interested in that, or alternatively go and have a look at the gameplay and tank reviews playlist that we have on the channel as well, which I'll link in the description down below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you have a game like this. Goodbye.